Tsleil-Waututh means people of the inlet, so our names and our identities are attached to the bodies of water that we reside on and rely on and have a reciprocal relationship with. Ever since I was little, I knew that that was our deepest connection there. And I was told that that's our great-grandmother, and so every time I swim in the ocean, I just feel like a deep sense of love. We're all descended from her. We're all part of the water. It's in our veins. It's who we are. She watches over us. She feeds us. She takes care of us. And she loves us, and that's why we love her. And we must give back to her in return.
I first met Kaya George when her family invited me to come and make some photographs. Kaya and her auntie Charlene Alec are members of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Their ancestral lands and waters are currently occupied by what is known as British Columbia, which includes the long inlet where the city of Vancouver currently sits.
Our spirit of our ancestors are still resoundingly there in these territories that we called home. We have a creation story that our first grandfather was transformed from a wolf into a two-legged, and he got this message to go into the bottom of the fjord and grab 2 handfuls of sediment. He cleared a space and cleaned it with cedar boughs and placed the sediment on some cedar boughs. And when the first light came up, he looked over where the sediment was, and there was our first grandmother. And they both stood up and heard the messages that you've been placed on this land to take care of it and to receive all its medicines and teachings and learn from it, but also protect it and take care of it. And when you do that, you will flourish.
And for millennia, they did flourish. And then European settlers came. The vast majority of Tsleil-Waututh died due to disease, and the survivors endured residential schools and other abuses, including an onslaught of toxic industrial development.
Along our shores, we've got BC Hydro Powerhouse, a chemical plant, Shell Refinery, Chevron Refinery, Trans Mountain, triple-sized coal port. Just we're inundated with industry.
The Trans Mountain Pipeline begins about 700 miles to the northeast, collecting crude oil from the tar sands of northern Alberta. And it runs all the way down to its terminal on Tsleil-Waututh waters. It has led to oil spills, coastline erosion, and countless wildlife have suffered. The pipeline already threatens Tsleil-Waututh's environmental and cultural values. And then, a decade ago, the company behind the pipeline proposed expanding it to double its capacity. They wanted to build a whole new pipeline alongside the old one.
The existing pipeline was put in the 50s. We were not allowed to speak out. We would have been charged, jailed, or killed.
The Tsleil-Waututh have launched a massive resistance against this pipeline expansion, and it's called the Sacred Trust Initiative.
So, Sacred Trust Initiative was born out of the Treaty Lands and Resource Department from our stewardship policy.
The Tsleil-Waututh were initially offered compensation as part of the expansion project. And so they researched its environmental impacts and consulted with experts, including those from First Nations communities in the Alberta tar sands. And in May 2012, they held a meeting.
All the community members in that meeting were asked to vote, should we take this financial offer or should we oppose it? Everybody that was in that meeting put their hand up and said we should oppose this.
The pipeline expansion as of now has been significantly halted, but it hasn't stopped.
We've had to go from people of the inlet existing to protectors. Many of my family have become protectors of the water.
To protect the water is to protect the entire ecosystem, including humans, the eelgrass, the salmon, wolves, and orca whales. Orca, which is also known as the killer whale, they have deep cultural significance to the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Trans Mountain Pipeline, as studies show, would mean certain death for these already endangered southern resident orcas.
You know, with the industry and the noise and the pollution and, the lack of food source for them, everything that has been pressed down upon them, our histories are quite similar. The way that they teach their young, the grandmother no longer reproduces, but it is her job to make sure that everybody in the family remembers the songs, remembers the hunting grounds and the way to get there and the processes of handing things down to one another. And that's the same as the way we are.
Traditionally, Charlene tells me, all Coast Salish communities are matriarchal. It's only the forces of colonization over the past 150 years that threatens those beliefs. And so, like the grandmother orca, Charlene's job is now to pass on the traditions, wisdom, and stories of the Tsleil-Waututh and to keep them alive, sacred, and moving forward.
So that our younger ones know that this is who they are and this is what they come from.
I feel like I have a moral obligation and responsibility to use my voice. I felt a really strong call to carry my ancestors' wishes and carry their beliefs and their traditions forward, because they really weren't able to. 40, 50, 60, especially 100 years ago, they were killed for a lot of the things that I'm saying and doing. I feel like I need to say what I have to, and I need to say what they wanted to. Carrying that forward is everything to me.
This is not a story about victimhood. It's not a story about despair. It's a story about what humans can be. Because while the Tsleil-Waututh are still fighting against the expansion of a massive oil pipeline, they're also fighting for the protection of their ancestral lands, waters, and traditional ways of being. Tsleil-Waututh knowledge has already helped clean the toxins out of some clam beds and salmon-bearing stream beds. They've replanted riverbanks and reintroduced things like eelgrass, which in turn brings back the herring, which in turn feed the orca in an abundant, beautiful circle. Many of us tell ourselves that humans are the problem, that we're parasites, sucking the earth dry and destroying everything in our path. We talk about that as though it's inherently human, but it's not. In fact, we can be so much more.
Humans are inherently bad for the planet. Capitalism and colonialism and white supremacy, patriarchy, those are it's ideas that are bad for the planet, not humans. We're able and we're capable of having a healthy reciprocal relationship with the planet and with the nature and the world around us. It's just these ideas of greed, like based in greed, that are destroying it.
It's just not a First Nations issue. It's everyone. We all need clean air to breathe. We all need fresh water, and we all need a place to live. We're not going anywhere, and you're not going anywhere, and so we need to do something together.